This is Doug Howard. I'm the president of Growth Team Strategies, and I'm here today with Kathi Fleck, one of our senior consultants. And we are here with Selling the Dream, our podcast about things business owners should be thinking about when they might want to sell their business or transition their business. Kathi, how are you today?
I'm great, Doug. Another great day in Texas.
It's a great day in Texas. Are there bad days in Texas? There are bad days in Texas. Is one of those.
When the heat gets up over 100 for 3 months in a row, that makes it a little rough.
Gotcha. Okay, well that's good to know.
We're not there yet.
I think a bad day in Texas beats a good day in Maryland, but I could be wrong. We'll see. All right. So today I want to talk about how processes drive value. So, in any business, we have processes. Now, sometimes we think we don't have processes, but what we're really saying is we probably have processes that just aren't documented or aren't consistently executed. But we all have processes. We all have a way we do whatever it is we do, right? Whether it's qualifying a lead or making a bank deposit or taking on a construction project or doing a tax return, we have a way of doing things. And part of the reason that's important is because part of what a business value comes from, part of what a buyer is looking for, I think are really two things. They're looking for future revenue and they're looking for a way of delivering product and service to get that revenue. Right. So, Kathi, I know when you were getting ready to sell your business and some of the things you were doing a couple of years before, processes were a very important focus and really one of your areas of expertise. So kind of tell us how that fit into the whole, the whole structure of how you were doing things.
Well, I did not have any experience in remodeling in people's homes. I was in the corporate world before that and dealt with businesses. We all do have processes, but I think that oftentimes the way that we're doing things are not run very well. So if we're doing something by the seat of our pants, each time we're doing it, that could be a process, but it may not be an effective one or one that our clients or our staff can appreciate. I think about some of the things that I did earlier on. I did the same thing over and over again, but it wasn't really very effective.
Yeah.
So, for example, letting my trades know what their paint colors were or their grout colors were for the tile. And I'd be getting calls at 7 o'clock in the morning when I wasn't even in my office, and it became an irritant to me. And I thought, I've got to fix this. This is not working. And so then I put the process together, and we were sending information out to the trades via email. And they would have a chart that they could pull up. And if they called and said, where is such and such? I'd say, well, did you open up your chart? And so once they got into the habit of it, it started working smoothly. So I look at that as being the process, even though my poor process beforehand was a process. So I just think that if we can develop a way of doing something that is effective and works well, is efficient, then that really makes the business much more efficient.
Sure. Well, and I think it goes to customer expectations, right? I mean, I know when we talk to prospects, really of any kind of business, right? Whether it's consulting projects we do or accounting projects I did years ago or construction projects, customer wants to know what to expect, right? How's this going to go? What can I expect? What's the deliverable? What will my experience be? What's that customer experience? And, it's hard enough to maintain that when you're a business owner that's been in business for a long time. Now we have a business transitioning. We have a different person, a different owner, different skill set, different personality. And, if we don't have those processes in place, even the consistency that the customer can expect is somewhat questionable, right? It becomes more of a challenge. But, it kind of makes me think of my mom. My mom's a great, grew up in an Italian household, great Italian food. And she's a great cook. And this is why I spend a lot of my time in Boston whenever I can, because I can consult from there and eat Italian food or consult from Maryland and not eat Italian food. So that seems like a pretty clear choice. But, we'll often say like, Mom, you make these meatballs or you make the sauce, whatever, like what's the recipe? Like, how do you do this? And she's like, I get in the kitchen and I grab a little bit of this and a little bit of that and I taste this and I do this. And it's like, okay, well, that's all well and good. But like we need, we need to be able to reproduce these meatballs when I get back to Maryland, which is not, that easy to do. And I think, when you think of successful businesses, and probably, the iconic one is probably something like McDonald's or, some other franchise, right? But when you buy a franchise, you buy two things. You buy brand recognition and a marketing strategy, and you buy an operating procedure on how to do it, right? So we got the golden arches and the picture of, what that is and the customer expectation and all the advertising that goes along with it. And then you have the actual, this is how we make a quarter pounder with cheese. This is how we make a sausage, egg, and cheese McGriddle. We use this tool. We use it because there's a certain element of consistency that makes that desirable for that customer going forward, right? And so, it's ironic that a business owner that is more removed from the customer but has a good process in place actually has an easier to sell business than a business owner that's fully engaged with every customer and customizes everything, or cooks very organically, or it's all about their personality.
Right. No, I agree with that. I just think I did not think I knew how to put processes together, and I almost hired somebody to do it for me. And I started looking at it and saying, I'm going to have so much of, I'm going to have to be so hands-on for her to do this. I may as well start doing it myself. And so I just started taking those things that were irritants to me, that really weren't working very well for my staff or my clients or my trades, and said, okay, this is how we're going to do this one. And then I would knock that one out. And then as another one came up, I would pick up that. So it's kind of the way I think now. So it's not like I'm looking for it. It's just, hey, this isn't working. What are we going to do to make this work better for everybody?
Yeah.
And
I think, over the years, we've done a fair amount with lean process improvement, concepts that came out of the Toyota production system and have been perfected in manufacturing and some other things over the years that have kind of found their way into service businesses as well. And basically the idea of mapping out a process, looking where the wastes are, the things that we're spending time and money doing that don't really value the customer, and eliminating those wastes are interesting. And in terms of selling a business, it can be really interesting because, first of all, it's very visual, right? You usually have maps and steps, and it's not like a list of procedures on a hard drive somewhere or in a book somewhere. Right? There's a lot of visual indicators. But the other thing is, it could be just the competitive edge, that way of thinking and that way of approaching processes, that could make that company even more competitive with somebody that comes in new, saying, well, I have new ideas, and we can even ramp up how efficient those processes get. But it's a heck of a lot easier if we have those processes defined.
Right. And your staff and your customers are all used to it. There was times when I would be just dropping everything whenever anybody called. And then when my staff came in and they were handling issues, my designer would always be handling a text, would be 10 o'clock at night. I said, no, you respond during these Monday through Friday or Saturday hours, and let them know that if you get a text after hours, you'll take care of it, unless it's an emergency and that's something else, but you'll take care of it during those hours. And I think once you set those expectations, it does make it a lot easier for everybody. And then the staff is happier, the clients are happier, there's a lot less problems that you're having to deal with.
No, I think that's a really good point because, in any service business, the customer has a big impact on how easy it is to deliver that service. Your trade partners, whether they're contractors or suppliers or whatever they might be, have a big impact. The more your processes are dialed in and you've kind of sort of trained them in terms of their expectations and what they do, right? You make it a lot easier for that successor to come in and execute that successfully, right? Especially if maybe their personality is a little different.
Right, but it also keeps the problems down because you're setting the expectations, and you're not having to put out fires all the time because of somebody expecting something different from what you're planning to do.
Sure. Well, and the good thing is, this is one of those things because, a big part of what we talk about with this podcast, right, is things you should be doing now to create a sellable business somewhere down the road in the future. But developing processes, documenting processes, training them, making them leaner and more efficient, those are things that not only help create a more sellable business, but they create a more manageable business today. They create a more profitable business today. To me, of all the things that we talk about, especially for folks that may be a little further out from selling, this is something that a really powerful effort done over a multi-year period of time, because it takes a couple of years to change people's behaviors and change some of the things you need to do. but you can fundamentally improve the ability for that company to perform.
Right.
And also just the headaches you have in running a business. Because I always find it ironic that when we take a process and make it better, we make it leaner, more streamlined, it's not only good for the company and has less cost associated with it, but it's usually better for the customer. They have a better experience,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually less frustrating for the person doing the work.
Right.
You
I think
know,
so. It's a win-win for everybody. It's
yeah,
amazing how, and it's not like you're going to get it right the first time, or you might have to put a good bit of time. I remember change orders was a big issue. Many of my clients just thought that changes that they requested didn't have a dollar sign to them, and they were surprised when they got an additional bill. So I thought, well, this isn't working. So I put together a one-page type document and explained it step by step. I read it as part of our contract. I had them sign off on it and keep a copy of it. And problem was gone. So, people had a better understanding of what to expect versus their own interpretation. But it just makes everything run so much better.
yeah. No, there's no question, and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
something that folks can spend some time working on. And one of the things we like is just that whole notion of continuous improvement. Like you said, you
Mm-hmm.
don't get it right the first time. I think Toyota's been doing continuous improvement since the 1950s. And almost 100 years later, they're still finding things to improve.
Right.
Because circumstances change,
Mm-hmm.
technology changes, customer buying behavior changes. So it all lends itself to this notion of, working continuously on those things.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing I like about lean is you don't have to start with, the whole of everything. You don't have to measure everything. Sometimes people talk about lean and Six Sigma, and they use those words interchangeably, which is interesting because they're actually very different approaches to the same type of
Mm-hmm.
problem, right? So Six Sigma came out of Motorola, which was also a Japanese company, in about the same time frame, saying we're going to measure everything we do, and then we're going to look for improvements, 6 places beyond the decimal point. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but that's a very top down, very expensive, very comprehensive way of doing things. Lean says we can start with a slice of a process. We can take not only, the change order process, but even just a piece of it and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're going to look at those 3 or 4 steps, see what's slowing us down, what's getting in our way, what's
Right.
making it difficult. Take a little bit of that out if it doesn't affect the customer negatively. And we can see improvement right off the bat. And
Mm-hmm.
that momentum that comes out of that improvement generally frees up time to do more of it.
Right, right. And it can
So
change too. There's times when I put together a process and thought this was the way to go, and then my staff would say, "Well, what about this?" Or we'd run into another issue and say, "Okay, well now we need to tweak it a bit." But
yeah,
I got the buy-in from my team, and also brought my trades in for different meetings and said, "Okay, such and such that's happening is not working. Let's talk about why it's not working from your end, and we'll talk about why it's not working from our end, and then together come up with an agreed process of how we want to run things." And it always improved our relationship. The timeline, the flow, everything always was improved.
yeah. Well, and I think too, when we start thinking about selling the business and transitioning the business, if I can say to somebody that's a potential buyer, when you come in, we've got documented processes. I will be able to train you, maybe
Mm-hmm.
on some areas that are not your area of expertise. And more importantly, you'll be able to follow whether or not folks are doing what they should or shouldn't be doing, if things are the way they should be or they're not, right? It's a measure of comfort, a measure of peace of mind for that new owner that may be coming into an industry they don't know quite as well as we
Right, right.
do, right? So I think it's a big deal. So, folks hopefully should come away with this and say, whether it's because I want to sell or I want a more manageable or profitable business, whether it's something way off in the future or relatively soon, now's the time really to take a look at those processes and just start down that path or continue down that path of um,
Mm-hmm.
defining them, documenting them, training people on them, and continuously improving them.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a really good start.
Yeah, very good. All right. Well, once again, we have solved the problems of the universe in 15 minutes or less. So that's exciting. Kathi, thanks so much for being here and sharing some stories and some thoughts, because if people are serious about getting these businesses to be sellable and to get on to the things that they maybe like to do beyond that, this is a really good place to start. So appreciate your participation.
Always good spending time with you, Doug.
All right. Well, very good. Same to you. All right. Selling the dream. Hopefully that's something you're working on. And one of these days out there, as you get your processes and business in order, you'll be looking at things from the other side, like we are, the happy side. All right. All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Selling the Dream podcast, starring Doug, Howard, and Kathi Fleck. Both Doug and Kathi have built and sold successful businesses and hope this podcast will help other small business owners do the same. Tune in every week to hear more tips for increasing the value of your company so you get the highest return for your years of hard work when it comes time to sell or transition your business. Can't wait till next week? Check out our website for more information at www.growththemes.com.